Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are joining us from, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Josh from Business Review Webinars, and I will be your host. It is our pleasure to have Donaldson Filtration Solutions with us today, who will be presenting the webinar entitled The Why and How of Filtration Maintenance. Today's guest speakers are Bart Roberts, Director, Industrial Air Filtration, EMENA, Jeff Hodgson, European Service Sales and Execution Manager. Before we begin, I'd like to welcome you to our webinar platform On24. You'll notice that this webinar is browser-based, so if you disconnect for any reason, please just click on the link that you received via email to rejoin the session. In order to ask questions, you can send them in via the questions widget. Just type them into that box at the top right-hand corner of your screen and click Submit. We will allocate some time at the end of the session to address any questions or thoughts that you may have. And please use the yellow help widget if you require any assistance, and you can move, resize, and maximize any of the windows in front of you to get a better view of the slides. But for now, please allow me to welcome Bart.
All right, thank you very much, Josh. I hope everyone can hear me well. And once more, also from my side, a very much welcome to this webinar. Before I'm diving into the topic, what I would like to do first is really like to start with a short introduction of who is Donaldson. So you'll see now a slide that represents our company here, and basically in its pure essence, we're a filtration company. A filtration company that has been around for more than a century. And the numbers, together with the data and the associated pictograms on this slide, they should really help you getting a good understanding and of who we are. But I want to give you a couple of important highlights. First of all, we serve a diverse set of filtration applications within different industries across the globe. And the experiences that we have built from all of these different businesses, they have helped us to develop a wide variety of filtration solutions. On top of that, we have been doing a lot of worldwide collaboration across the globe, and through the utilization of all the technologies across these industries, they have served many customers so far with whatever filtration solution or whatever filtration challenge they had. So actually, in essence, and really everything we do every day, everything we work on, it's all about filtration. So let's tune in on the topic of today, which is really maintenance. And maintaining your filtration system will keep your operation alive, day in and day out. It really leads us to why we at Donaldson emphasize so much about the importance of proper maintenance, of proper filtration system maintenance. And the purpose and principles of this company, of our company, really support our mission, which is advancing filtration for a cleaner world. So let's dive now into the topics that we will be addressing in the next 30 minutes. These topics are, we're going to talk really about the why of filtration system maintenance. We're also going to talk about the how of filtration system maintenance. What options are there to perform service and maintenance, and how can we be smarter about it? Through, for instance, connected solutions. Finally, we'll be rounding it up with a Q&A session. And as Josh already mentioned, please really feel free to type in all of your questions during the presentation in the chat box. We'll try to answer as many of them as possible. But before we talk about the topic of today's presentation, I'd like to share a couple of words about the basics of filtration. So what we have displayed on this slide here, it's a simple cartridge dust collector. And the top part on the left side shows you how the air flows through the system. So on one side, you have the dirty air extraction from the environment. We'll be capturing that on the outside of the cartridges, and the clean air then will return via the inner part. That is illustrated on the top section there with the blue colored flow. Through then applying a pressurized pulsating air pulse in the inner part of the cartridge, the dust will get released and falls in the bottom side in the hopper. So obviously, there are hundreds of different applications, lots of different dust types, but actually the principle always remains the same. And that leads us now really into showing you a next simplified graph, which explains everything about a filter change and why a filter change is so important when doing proper maintenance. So by no means this graph is something that you should rely on as to material for making any business decisions. It's a representative image for visualization. But the story behind should tell you that for any given dust collection system, there's always an optimal point where you should change your filtration elements. Regardless whether these filtration elements are filter cartridges, they could be bags, panels. But when you go really beyond that point, then you're going to introduce high risk, higher operation costs, more usage of electrical power, more usage of compressed air. Your pressure drop will increase, and you should really think about the higher replacement costs, the higher labor costs, possibly longer production downtime, and so on. But in the next couple of slides, we will illustrate what are some of the risks and some of the things that can happen if you push really your filter system beyond this optimal point. So proper maintenance really starts with checking the state of your system. Jeff will be explaining all about that later on. But as to the why, I would like to further talk a little bit about production life cycle consideration as well as associated costs. So what this slide represents here, this represents the total cost of ownership of any given dust collection filtration system. And basically, there are three main components. It all starts with a capital investment, of course. Capital investment to acquire a dust collection system for whatever application that is needed into your production environment. Then you have the middle block, which is the operating costs. Those include electrical power, compressed air, sort of maintenance already, production downtime you need to factor in, and some other hidden costs. And next to that, a complete system maintenance, whether that's schedule-based or potentially even condition-based. We'll touch upon that later on. All of these three blocks, they are determining your total cost of ownership. But from an operational point of view, proper maintenance really will help you to keep a lot of cost drivers under control. For instance, your electrical consumption. Because the higher your pressure drop is, the higher the energy need for dust extraction. Your compressed air usage. Not well-maintained systems will just simply require more compressed air, and they will require higher pressures, plus a higher frequency to clean your filtration elements. But it's not only that. You can also think about factors such as product quality and cleanliness of operation. All of these are influenced by maintenance actions. And already when we look at the production life cycle of a dust collecting system, without even considering the operation cost, the next chart shows you that over the full lifetime of a system, maintenance costs already represent 2/3 of your total cost. And when we talk about lifetime of a system, I think you all can imagine that a dust collecting system has a typical lifespan of around 20 years. So this graph really shows you the cost of ownership without taking into account the operational costs. And over the lifetime, we're talking about in a normal way of operating your system with proper maintenance, 2/3 of your total cost is already maintenance. But that 2/3 or 67% can very quickly go up to 80%, 90% if you're not doing proper maintenance. So let's now tune in further on why maintenance is so important for your dust collecting system. First of all, what it will do, it will really help you achieving a couple of important aspects within your operation. It'll help you to keep your pressure drops under control, which I already talked about. It will help you to keep your fans running at efficient and an acceptable electricity cost level. It will keep your compressed air usage at acceptable level, and we all know that compressed air is not a cheap thing. And it will make sure that your system is not triggered for excessive cleaning. So overall, we're talking about the help. It will help you to do energy savings. And it will also address and help you achieving increased product quality and cleanliness. This is the first block of what proper maintenance will help you with. As a second part, it will also help you to avoid high emissions. You don't want high emissions. It will also help you to avoid low extraction from the environment, whatever that environment is. And it will help you to prevent blockage and leakage in connected pipings. But even beyond that, it will help you to avoid explosions because you can have dust accumulations. And there's lots of different dust types which have a sort of explosion type of dust. Last but not least, proper maintenance will also help you protecting the health and safety of your employees, and it will return clean air to the environment. Also, it will help you to comply with local, national, international standards and regulations. But, and yes, there's always a but, if you don't pay proper attention, well, then there's a number of worst-case scenarios that can happen. Worst-case scenarios that we have seen in the field. And looking at these pictures, they can tell you a lot of stories, things that can happen. You can have hopper plugging, you can have surrounding pipes plugging, and in many of these occasions, these surrounding pipes are very high up. They're not very easy reachable. So how many hours, days to clean these things? How much downtime? Imagine how much associated costs you can have. But other things such as too low conveyor speed, too high delta P, all of that can result in, for instance, an extraction of only 2,000 cubic meters. Whereas in essence, your system was designed or set up for extracting 6,000 cubic meters. While as a result, you can have impacts on your health and safety, impacts on the environment, impacts even on your production. But even further, the accumulation of dust can lead to explosive situations. It can lead to fires, safety issues, which are, for instance, displayed in the following pictures. The middle picture shows you, a collapsed element, a filtration element, which will lead into emissions, too high emissions. Or on the right side, even fire due to explosive dust. But even beyond that, there can even be other effects. Or better, what you see here, I'll explain quickly, but what you see here, no effects, because sometimes no effects or things that you maybe are not measuring can also mean something. So what's really happened in this case? Our customer called us because the units were running 24/7, but the delta P was always at the same level. No pulsing happening to clean the cartridges. We were talking about reinforced ATEX units with high explosion danger because a special resin was used. We're talking here about CFK fibers, the kind of fibers which are used in automotive manufacturing for car interiors. And when they really accumulate, they can be really dangerous. They can be really leading to explosions. So by opening up the dust collecting system, you could see the full accumulation of these dust fibers. So really a dangerous situation, highly explosive. So the message here is that also no indicators can mean something. So our intention here really is to make you aware that not doing proper maintenance can come with high risks and associated high costs. And that really leads me to the conclusion of why it's so important to take care of your operation. to take care of your employees and your environment. And from our point of view, it's all about doing proper maintenance. But I'm going to pass now the word to my colleague Jeff, who's going to explain you how to do this best. Jeff, all yours.
Great. Thank you, Bart. Thank you for the first part of this webinar. That really that nicely sets the scene now for the how part of the webinar. So also from me, a good afternoon to everybody, and thank you all for joining us today. Again, just a quick reminder to raise any questions during the session using the chat option. And again, once I've completed this second part of the webinar, then we'll be open for questions at the end of the session. So firstly, let's see what we're going to be covering in this second section. Firstly, really important part. We all know that safety is paramount, and it's the first thing that we always need to consider then when we're carrying out any type of work, but especially work that's being carried out on site. Then we'll go into the key steps for effective, efficient, and then quality maintenance. And then how can Donaldson support you? We do have a wide range of standard and tailored service offerings to ensure that you are covered, and we'll go into a little bit of detail on each of those. And then, as Bart alluded to as well, smart monitoring as we go into the future of maintenance, how remote monitoring puts the smart into maintenance of your collectors and systems. So going to the first section here for safety, and we all know that safety is number one. So key considerations when servicing and maintaining collectors and systems. Firstly, what is the type of work? Where is it going to be carried out? It could be at height. It could be in a confined space. We could be working outside in a zoned area, and then also who's going to be carrying out that type of work. And really importantly, making sure that we are wearing the appropriate PPE for the type of work that's being carried out, the materials that are being handled, and the environment also that we're working in. Then we lead on to documentation and authorization. Considerations really there are for being inducted for the particular site that we're working on, any forms of risk assessments and method statements. Is there a permit required to carry out that work, and has it been authorized and signed off? And do have the necessary certification in place? And very importantly, we have live systems, so making sure that the equipment that we're working on is sufficiently isolated and locked off. Really important before we start that work. And then we move on to the replacement filters and components. Making sure that function and fit is so important. It's all correct for the materials that we're actually handling. So the filters specifically, are they the right type for the materials and the application that we're handling? Things can change in a collector. Ingredients can change in a process. So we always need to make sure that everything is absolutely appropriate for what we're handling. Whether the filters need to be earthed, an anti-static version, flame retardant, is the temperature involved? Is the moisture? What are those dust characteristics? So here, some of the key steps, some important points before we go into some of this servicing detail. Compressed air pressure, and Bart was talking about that a little bit earlier. For a reverse jet filter, this is really vital to the performance of the equipment and the longevity of the equipment as well. It's not only just the compressed air pressure itself, it's the quality of that compressed air, and also making sure that you have the correct air volume. As we all know, with reverse jet filters, there is a time between pulses. It's making sure that we have the correct compressed air pressure, the right quality, and the right volume back up to the right level for the next pulse. And then moving on to the hopper arrangement. Bart showed a few photographs there of some hopper arrangements. It's really clear that this is not meant to be used for storage at all. That should be clear and emptied at all times. Never build up material inside the hopper. And then also know about pressure drop and when filters are required to be changed. And earlier there was a very nice chart, a graph showing when is the appropriate time to change out. And then also looking at the filters. Filters, in effect, the cartridges themselves. Do they look dirty? Well, that's good. That means that the unit is working. But really, take that as keep things in check at that point. There is, on one side, over dirty, and then underside, and making sure that the pressure drop is suitable for that application. And then all for one and for all cartridges in a dust collector must be changed at the same time. It's really important that actually takes place, so that the air on the new cartridges going in, if only half of them are changed, would actually direct itself through its easiest route. So therefore, it will concentrate the airflow and obviously the dust and the material that's being collected onto those specific cartridges. And then moving on to pulsing matters as well. Diaphragm valves must be checked on a regular basis. They're a key part of a dust collection system. How many of us have walked past a collector where it has maybe, say, 10 valves? You're hearing a sequence of them pulsing, and there's a totally different sound to another diaphragm valve. That has then failed. It has ruptured at that point. So what we have here is really a reminder for ourselves of some of the typical components that build up a dust control system. This diagram here is just for your illustration purposes, so that we cover all of these points. On the left-hand side here, then we have the initial point where we're capturing the material, so capturing it at source through any form of hood or enclosure arrangement. And then we have a sequence of dirty air ductwork leading to the inlet of the filter. But on its way there, we need to go past areas of bends, maybe working at height. We've got inspection doors there so that we can check that dirty air ductwork. We may have a non-return valve prior to the inlet on the filter. And then once the dirty air is entering the dirty air chamber of the collector, then material is being collected on the outside of the filters, clean air passing through into the clean air chamber, and then the material that's collected is typically then pulsed off the cartridges, dropping through the hopper. And then there is a variety of discharge arrangements then underneath the hopper, be it a rotary valve, screw conveyor, or bin arrangement. But I just go back to the point earlier that the hopper underneath always needs to be clear and clean. So then the clean air then passes on through to the fan set. On its way there, it may be going through some form of secondary or HEPA filter into the eye of the fan. We may have a silencer on the outlet of the fan, and then a ductwork system, sometimes either discharging the air out to atmosphere or back into the working environment. So all of these components require checking, they need maintaining, and they need replacing as required. So often maintenance is viewed as replacing filters as and when required. And the thought is, I've changed my filters, I've serviced the collector. By no means is that a full service on the system, and is it being checked correctly? So there's much more to consider. So effective checking and maintaining will ensure reliability, make sure that we've got uptime, lowest total cost of ownership, and effective production for your business. And importantly, protection of employees. So where do we start with servicing? One of the key things is knowing on a service what you're actually starting with. So it's really important we document how the collector and the system is performing prior to the service being started. So take performance readings, compare these also at the end of the service. And it's also worthwhile taking notes, making photographic evidence as you go along. They all form part of a really good service historical data. If there is available the initial design performance, again, that would be really good. It really should be on file anyway, but then also measuring at the point of the service how it compares to that initial design data. Then the service itself. Firstly, have a very comprehensive checklist. This will ensure that all components are checked, they are maintained, all replaced, and then that no items are left unrecorded that they haven't been checked in any way. It's nice to have a very simple coding method. This really makes light work of the reporting, being able to understand it, to go through what has been checked, what needs attention, and so on. In addition to replacing those primary filters and secondary filters where they're being fitted, consider all the other consumables. It's really important that when change out the filters, that they're all replaced at the same time, as I mentioned. Ensure the filter seals are in good condition and that the sealing surfaces are thoroughly cleaned. This is a really important part, and it really makes sure that you've got that effective seal and that barrier between the dirty air side and the clean air side of the filter. So during the service itself, looking at recommendations, typically when we're actually carrying out the service, you'll also find some other components of the system that may need some form of repair or replacing. Donaldson Service do have van stock, so again we can call on those van stocks there and then at site, keeping downtime to a minimum, and being able to fit those parts during the service. Also, what just needs to be considered for the next service, and then we plan accordingly. It may be something that we anticipate may be required on that next service. Plan for that, prepare for it, and make sure that the next service is in line with those expectations. Then, once the actual service is complete, starting up of the system and checking that everything operates correctly, and make those final adjustments to ensure that it is a quality service and all components are working effectively. And then moving on to post-service. Again, repeat those initial pre-service readings. Compare the performance between pre-service and post-service, and then draw any comparisons. And if anything's out of kilter there, then it may need some form of attention. So maintenance for optimal total cost of ownership. Lower your total cost of ownership, and it's really important here that we have obviously utilities connected to the collector, both compressed air and electrical energy. On the compressed air side, making sure that the settings are correct, and then use where appropriate the clean on demand settings on the system. That will drastically reduce the compressed air consumption. But not only the compressed air in itself, it will reduce the wear and tear on the filters, the cages, the diaphragm valves, etc. And then electrical energy, we all know that's a high cost in relation to the high kilowatts that can be consumed. So think of possible uses of inverters, high efficiency motors, and then that's also linked to pressure drop. We were talking earlier about pressure drop and energy consumption, then draw that comparison between the two. And then the filters themselves, measuring that pressure drop and understanding the trends of operation. Over a time, you will understand, or measuring all of this, you will get a predetermined knowledge of how filters are performing and when they become required to be changed out. Making sure that you use high quality filter specifications at lowest pressure drop and maximum efficiency. And then going again also to those ancillary components, making sure all the other components are checked and they are keeping the lowest cost of ownership. Block ducts, rotary valves, a thorough inspection is totally key to effective and quality maintenance. So, moving on now to how Donaldson can support your business. Here you can see from Donaldson IAF perspective, from the EMEA region, the extensive coverage that we can provide. We've got you covered throughout the EMEA region, ensuring that you do have that local support from a global organization. And then some of the key pillars with regard to industrial air filtration service. Firstly, the expertise in dust filtration technology, and then also making sure that everything that gets replaced has genuine filter media and filter components. That the staff that would carry out the service themselves, again, are fully trained and qualified service engineers. And then also ensuring that we have a service offering to suit yourself. So a very comprehensive offering, making sure that we are simplifying those processes. And then going back to the previous slide there with our coverage, local service capability of a global organization. So here are some of the standard service offerings that are available. I'm not going to go into detail on each one, a broad brush on each. So we have Inspect, Protect, and Protect Plus. Firstly, the Inspect is pretty much what it says there. It's a visual inspection, and then we carry out minor adjustments. But in all, a very comprehensive report at the end of the inspection visit. And then as we move on to Protect, that is then a full service, making sure that we're also replacing the filters and, again, that comprehensive report at the end. And then in addition to Protect, we have our Protect Plus, which is the same as the Protect, with the very nice addition there of the service kit covering all the consumable components on the actual collector. Then we have our flexible site services. So we've gone through some of our standard packages, but what do we give as far as flexible site service is concerned? We're there to support you through our additional service capability in the form of covering for breakdowns, emergencies, and those call-outs. We also have a service to suit you offer. These are tailored service packages to suit your application, your needs, your production. If you require more frequent visits, is the work to be carried out outside of hours or at weekends? We look at and discuss with you what your maintenance needs are and any form of restrictions there that we can actually help you with and comply. And then moving on to service projects. This is in the form basically of upgrades and modifications, relocations of filters, and recommissioning. We know that sometimes collectors may be moved within existing premises or maybe one from another. Again, we will consult with you as to the suitability of it, help you with the relocation, ensure it's to a compliant standard and it's going to perform to the standards that you require, whilst also servicing the equipment. And then as a reminder here for replacement parts and filters. It's a really quick and easy way to identify filters with the ability to then order online. You can also search by part number, through cross-references, or even through equipment types. Replacement filters for Donaldson and other major brands of dust collectors. We keep an extremely large stock so that we can provide quick delivery from our distribution center. And then we also have within that function our guest checkout feature. We move on now to look at smart, simple, remote monitoring solution for dust collectors. And here we'll be showing the Donaldson IQ connectivity. So here you can see how simple it is to install the Donaldson IQ and get connected. Really quick and easy. And you can see from the photograph here, person actually at site fitting the IQ gateway to the collector is magnetically attached to the collector. There's no drilling, so it's a simple magnetically attached to your collector, linking up then the compressed air as a minimum and the delta P connections, and your smart monitoring is then underway, allowing you as the customer to focus on your core business, and then Donaldson would show up as and when required and as agreed. You can set up very simply alerts and alarms. So first level would be some form of alert, and then it would move on to an alarm. We have then a variety of simple performance views so that you can check on the collector through various parameters. Variety of different monitoring. That data that's stored there is available for download, and to emphasize also, these can be fitted to non-Donaldson collectors too. So what does IQ track? Well, as standard, it will cover these items here on the left-hand side. It will monitor and measure relative airflow, the pulse valve health. That comes by when we set up the IQ for a specific collector. We know the type of collector, the size of collector, the number of pulse valves. We're monitoring the differential pressure, monitoring and recording the maintenance hours, and then, as we pointed out earlier, how important compressed air is. We'll be monitoring that compressed air pressure at all times. So in addition to that, what also is available? So the options are, and we did see it from the diagram a little bit earlier, that secondary filters or HEPA filters are sometimes fitted to systems. So again, there's the option, or it is an option, to again monitor the delta P on the secondary filter. We can look at particulate trend, so looking at the emissions and looking at particulate trend on the clean air outlet. Then we can also measure, depending on the application, the internal temperature and then humidity. We talked also about keeping the hopper clean and free-flowing underneath the collector. So we've got a measurement there for the hopper plug to make sure we know that the base of the hopper is clear and it's got free-flowing material. And then if something like a rotary valve or screw conveyor is fitted, then monitoring that rotary valve or screw conveyor or airlock system is in operation. So what do we have here? We have so it's there to support efficient maintenance and operation. So it automatically monitors the status of all your collectors from a single web-based dashboard. It identifies any potential issue before they create for the larger, more effective, intensive correction action. And then for reduced unplanned downtime, monitors the key parameters on the collector and proactively addresses any form of issues. Set and configure alerts so you receive those notifications when preset thresholds are breached and your collector is operating outside of the preset parameters. And then manage and track regulatory compliance information, access real-time performance data to complete compliance reports, and then manage employees' exposure risk by monitoring relative airflow through the dust collector. IQ can be added to part of a service offering, and this all leads to condition-based maintenance, service and maintenance when it's needed, and most importantly, when it is predicted. And also note that it doesn't just cover Donaldson collectors. These can be fitted to non-Donaldson collectors too. So it's really exciting. It's smart. See for yourself how smart it is. You will look back and think, how did we manage before IQ was actually fitted? So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you for listening and for raising your questions during the actual presentation. Please still, if you've got any other questions for the latter part of the presentation there, please still raise those. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be taking those questions, and I will pass you over now to Josh for the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Jeff, and fantastic presentation. And also a little bit of information down at the bottom of your screen, if you're an attendee, there is what we call a resource widget, which is just a page in a small green box. In there, you've got numerous links for Donaldson Filtration if you want to do some further looking into their services. But in the meantime, we'll go through the questions. The first one is asking, how many service engineers do you have in the UK?
Yep, in the UK for IAF, obviously with Donaldson Business we have service divisions within separate parts of the business. But for the UK in IAF, so industrial air filtration, we have 4 service engineers. We have a new apprentice just starting with us, and we also work very closely with some Tier 1 approved service partners. So all parts of the UK are nicely covered.
Thank you very much. And this next one is asking, does Donaldson have a checklist template to recommend which parts are to be checked during a service?
Yes, I think we can actually help you with that. We do have obviously our own service reports, and it's a service report that we've actually developed over a number of years. And those service reports do actually vary slightly from region to region. And the reason for that, the difference, is to suit those regional requirements in the way that certain pieces of information or certain checks need to take place, or certain types of sign-off. So, yeah, if that questions come in, we will we can send something out that will show a very sort of effective checklist to help.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. What is the expected lead time to service once requested? What is the best way to ensure Donaldson engineers are available to perform service at a short notice? Yeah,
sure. You look at that in the sense of what type of service it is, and what would that service actually entail. We have a wide range of collectors, right from say a single cartridge or a couple of cartridges in the collector, up to maybe 112 cartridges in the collector. So depending on that, we'll be looking at the number of service engineers when the work needed to be carried out. But in essence, to carry it out, we're available for those call outs. But if it's a service, it can be anything from a matter of a few days away through to sort of 2 to 3 weeks. And in some instances, customers are very proactive in the sense of knowing when their shutdown is, and they would be placing those orders at that point. But also, as we mentioned with regards to IQ and leading on to condition-based monitoring, then that really sort of sets the scene for the future, how that planning will actually take place.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. This one is asking, does this service, is it already up and running in Brazil and Algeria?
Is it already up and running in those two? Right. That's something I will need to check on both of those locations. Yeah, we'll have to come back to that one. I imagine that we do have the ability, but I will check that.
Okay, brilliant. No worries. You mentioned condition-based. What does that mean?
Okay, yeah, condition-based. At this moment in time, if you look at, we were talking there about some of our standard service packages, and quite often they're on a time-based, i.e., I require that annual service, and if it's been sort of predicted that the annual is about right, then or every 2 years to carry out the full service, then that gets carried out on a time basis. Condition-based monitoring is then through IQ, then you're monitoring the actual collector itself, and you're predetermining what is actually required. We're looking at the amount of hours of operation. We may be looking at emission levels. We'll be looking at pressure drop and how things are performing. We'll be checking that all the performance criteria is in the right place, to the point where really nicely on the graph that Bart was showing earlier, at that sort of predetermined point when something needs to be replaced, i.e. the filters at that point. So condition-based is really checking the performance of the collector and knowing when it's actually due for a service, rather than purely on a time-based system.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. What is Donaldson's response time for breakdown fallout?
Yeah, again, that varies. That varies a little bit. We have instances where we can be there the same day, the next day, and depending on sometimes the nature of it or where the actual collector is located, it may take a few days. But we would always talk with the customer and consult on that and understand what the breakdown is. Is there anything that we can do immediately on the phone or checking something, which also links a little bit to IQ. You know, if you've got that intelligence of how it's actually performing and understanding if there's something wrong, to know in advance what that actually is, to either predict what is actually required, that really helps from that point of view.
Brilliant, thank you very much. You showed that there is a relation between the use of air and electricity. Why not making a calculation tool inside the controls by entering the local costs of energy, air and filter replacement? The system could calculate the best balancing cost by using air, power and lifetime filters.
Yeah, a very good question. A very good question. Yes, behind the scenes, we haven't done that sort of building it into the system, but outside of that, we have done that. We've checked how those relate to each other, in the sense of the performance, the pressure drop, the compressed air consumption, and the actual kilowatt consumption, to draw that in overall and understand what those costs are and how it becomes effective. And that may be something that how we move on with smart monitoring, that's something could actually be built in, so that it puts rather than just looking at the consumption, it puts a value against that, typically for compressed air and electrical energy. So a really good question. I think it's something that we need to think about to pursue further.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Why do you require all cartridges to be replaced at the same time? Yeah,
that really good question. Let's take an example of, say, maybe a 12 cartridge collector. It's opened up, somebody looks inside and says, right, there's two there that are damaged, let's just replace those two and let's get that sealed back up, making sure that the sealing mating faces are clean, the seals are okay. We close it up and we put it back into operation. Then what will happen is the air will always take its easiest route. Okay, so that air is laden with dust. So what's actually going to happen is the focus then will be on those clean new cartridges. So everything will focus on those two, and what will happen is the dust and the air that will then start to blind those filters at that point. And before you know it, you're back to square one very, very quickly, where effectively all of the cartridges are at a higher pressure drop at that particular point.
And basically, Jeff, to add to that, what you're creating really a full unbalance in your system. That's basically the thing you're creating, which you don't want.
Yes. Yeah, good point.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much for that. We've got one here asking, are service reports kept on record?
Yes. Service reports are kept on record, not only for, when we complete a service, the copy of the service report is then logged with the customer, but we keep that on file for ourselves. Firstly, to recall if needs be from a customer's perspective, but also for ourselves to check what service has been previously carried out. Did we have any form of recommendations before we carry out the next service? So yes, they're all kept on file.
Brilliant. So we've got a question here asking, what's the contact for bag filter change service in Ireland?
Right. Okay. Yeah. In Ireland, we have two main approved service partners in Ireland. Most of this is managed with our country manager over in Ireland, based around the Dublin area, a guy called Ivor Rowden, who then basically orchestrates between the two approved service partners who would actually carry out that work and who's best placed for it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Got one asking, can you give more detail on the kind of alarms that are set in IQ? for example, pressure or dust levels. What alarm would be set, and if alarm activates, how is the user notified?
Right, okay. Yep. You want to cover this one, Bart? Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff, can you repeat?
Yeah, do you want me to just cover that one on the alerts?
Yeah, and
I
can further fill in. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. So a standard with IQ, a standard out of the box, then it's measuring. You're measuring delta P or the pressure drop across the filters, and you're also measuring the compressed air. So they're the two initial points. We're also putting in there the type of the collector, and therefore also the number of pulse valves. So we've got that information as well. So if we just hone in on that part for a start, then through that operation we can set alerts and we can set alarms. So alerts would be the first level, alarm would be the second level. The first one being an alert that something isn't quite right at this moment in time, it dipped below a preset value. But if that then continuously maintains, or shall we say drops to a figure, let's say, i.e. like a 0, then an alarm would actually go off. So the initial point is the compressed air and pressure drop at that point, and then it's also there's a view then also of the graph of the operation. So we've got time, we have compressed air level, so we know when the collector is actually in operation and what those parameters were at that point. In addition to that, then I showed a little bit about the other options as well: particulate monitor, temperature, humidity, etc. Again, they would be set, and again you can have an alert level, so something isn't quite right, still in operation, but it's getting close to a certain preset level, or if it bypasses that, it goes straight to an alarm function at that point.
And maybe to add to that, Jeff, so we do have some people in the organization that of course help setting up the dashboards and help you determining which alarms and alerts and so on. And those are things that we have available within the organization.
Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. We've got another one asking, is IQ going to be free-to-use service for customers taking out service and LEV testing, or will this be an additional cost to the customer?
Yeah, a good point. It will be an additional cost because, firstly, in the first place, there is a subscription for it on an annual basis, and then there is the cost actually of the gateway and the installation. But for a service customer, or already on service and we're going to be at site carrying out service, if IQ is not already fitted, then we can fit that during the service visit, so that we keep that we keep the installation cost of IQ to as low as possible.
Brilliant. Also, is a service report automatically sent out after a service visit is conducted?
Yes, it is. We have situations whereby in completing a service, we've got two types of report. Sometimes, the service may be taking a full day. So at the end of it, we have what's called a brief report, i.e. the type of service that's actually being carried out. Put some basic readings on there and have a sign off that report has been completed. And then what we will do is we will complete the full detailed report over the next day or two, and then that should be sent on to the customer and also go on file at Donaldson, as we mentioned.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Another one here asking, can I monitor my collector fitted with IQ on my smartphone?
Great question. Yes, it can. So it's web-based. So whether you're working off your PC or laptop, either on site or remote, but also on your phone, then yes, you've got that ability to be able to check on it at any point. But importantly, that smartphone also will receive those alerts and alarms.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. We've got probably time for one more. Can IQ be installed on my other brand collectors?
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes, it can.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's very much so. It can. So again, you could see from the photograph I showed how it was actually fitted to the collector, so magnetically fitted on the collector, and then as those initial functions of compressed air and delta P, that type of collector it can be fitted on. So other brands of collector.
And what we can say also about it is that we constantly, at this point in time, further develop it to have more features, to have more capabilities. It's really part of IoT and the developments that you see in IoT, and it allows us really to become smarter and smarter at maintaining these type of systems.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for questions today. If we didn't get round to answering your question, then maybe our speakers will get back to you at a later date via email or something like that. Also, in the resource list at the bottom of your page, there is a PDF copy of this webinar available. It will be available now and the whole time that this will be on demand on our website. So that just leaves me to thank Bart and Jeff for what was a great presentation, and to Donaldson Filtration Solutions for sponsoring this session. And to the attendees, you'll receive an email shortly telling you how you can access the on-demand version of this webinar, or you can access this through our website, which is www.business-review-webinars.com. And we look forward to sharing further webinars with you, so please do keep an eye out on the website just mentioned, and follow us on Twitter @BRWebinars for daily updates, and join in our LinkedIn group, Business Review Webinars. Thank you all once again, and I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day.